Hi! Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today is going to be an all-new type of class. I've been thinking about doing this kind of class for a little while, and I finally decided that after we finished all 3 books of the Dragonlance series, that then I would introduce this new type of class, which is going to be world analysis. So we have our character analysis, and now we're going to be doing our world analysis. And I think it'd be kind of fun that after we read a series or a section of a series or whatever else, when we have a good look at a world together, that then we could do a analysis of the world as a whole and what makes that world unique and what kind of elements it has in it, how it works, what kind of beings live in it, that kind of stuff. So I think that it'll be really, really fun to go ahead and take a look at our world of Krynn, the continent of Ansalon, which relates to our series that we just finished. So I'm pretty excited to go ahead and get into today, but there is going to be a lot of information. Just like our world that we actually live in is very complex with a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things that are important to the world and the way it works and how we live. So is there a lot to put in to these analysis classes, and so I'm going to make them into 2 parts. We're going to see how it goes. Obviously, I will get better as we continue doing them. If there's anything that I miss putting into the analysis in either part that you think I should have added and discussed, go ahead and let me know down below in either this video or once you see part 2, because I would really like to make sure I don't miss anything that you think is vitally important. Now, obviously, because we just read the first 3 books, that's going to be the main things I'm focusing on in the analysis-wise, because together, as a whole on this channel, we only can say that we know the first 3 books worth of information about this world. So if there's things that are important for the next set of books, that might be able to be revisited once we, in this channel, go ahead and do more classes on later books, that kind of stuff. So I kind of focused it on based on how what we've read and how I would know everybody, if they've watched the previous classes, would be able to follow along with what we've got here. So part 1, which is going to be this video, is going to have elements like magic, mythology, locations, the unique features of the world, the feel of the world, if there's any kind of specific feeling, that kind of stuff. That's going to be part 1. Then part 2 is going to include creatures, societies, different beings, histories, that kind of stuff. So there is a lot of information, just like a lot of things to go over, a lot of things to explain the importance of. So let's go ahead and I just said go ahead twice. Come on, Amy, get it together. You can talk. Let's go ahead for the 3rd time and get started. It took me a little bit to decide where I wanted to start our analysis today, because there's so many things to talk about, so many things that we're needing to analyze, to piece together, to see what's important and what's not important. And I decided to go ahead and start with mythology because of a couple reasons. The first is because most mythologies, and this one included, have a starting of the world story, a way the world was created, and that the god or gods are how the people and this world exist. And in this story, the gods did create the world. So it's important for the fact that it's kind of its starting place, is it comes from the gods, and it's very important to the people, as well as the fact that the mythology is kind of the main reasoning for the plot and the conflict in this story. And so it's very, very, very important throughout the whole set of 3 books and all through the overarching plot to have mythology be a very important section and something that we really need to look at to understand the story. So I thought that we would go ahead and start with that. So in this story, we have the polytheism. So it's not just one god, we've got multiple gods, which we know as we've read this book. And they're very active gods. They're not passive. They interact with the world, even though the characters at first didn't know it, and we as the readers at first didn't know it, we do learn that the gods did come to Earth, 2 of them in particular, and are helping the characters in the book, guiding them on the way that they need to be going. Or at least one of the gods is guiding them on the way they were going. The other one was trying to create the evil in existence and bringing it up to the forefront in order to take hold of the world and hoping to be able to become a permanent fixture and rule over the world of humans, instead of living on whatever plane the gods live on. Mentioned in this story are 4 gods. We've got Paladine, aka Fizbin, who we are most familiar with in the fact that we have most interaction with Fizbin / Paladine. Even though we don't know that's who he is at the beginning, we can look back, especially at the end, once you do learn who he is, you can definitely look back through the whole 3 books and see exactly where he starts you at the home, the inn in Solace, and how he travels with them, how he helps guide them, how the times when he becomes serious and actually really adjusts their path, or when he's just being stupid and you don't understand why he's doing something, and it adjusts the characters to doing something that they weren't doing before. So we really know Paladine the best, and he has the most interactive part in these stories. Second is Takhisis, or the Queen of Darkness, which is the next biggest presence in this book because she is the whole reason this conflict exists. She has come to Krynn and is trying to take over the world. She's the one building the armies, directing the armies, making the Draconians even exist in the first place when they didn't before, and corrupting the dragon eggs, the good dragon eggs. So the whole point of the story revolves around beating Takhisis, even if our characters and us as readers did not know to begin with that was the whole reasoning behind it until closer to the end. Then we have Gillian, which you're probably like, I don't remember much about Gillian, but that's because he was only mentioned 1, maybe 2 times. You know, he wasn't an interactive portion of this book or these set of books. But he is important because he is the god of neutrality. And that is probably part of the reason why he was not involved, because he was not taking sides for good or for evil. He was the neutral Switzerland in between. That was like, you guys figure it out. I'm just gonna chill over here. So we don't actually see him interact in these books, but we do get mention of him as being the god of neutrality. So I wanted to throw that in there as well. And then Rheorox is the last one that we get a full-blown mention of, and we get him a couple times as well. And we do know him a little bit more than we know Gillian, in the fact that he is the god of the dwarves in particular. He watches over the dwarves, and it is known that he is meant to be like a blacksmith and has, I believe it was, this is really bad, I should know this answer. I think it's is it the world that balances on the end of his anvil? I think that's what they mentioned in this book, was that that the world balances on the end of his anvil. Something like that. Sorry, I should have had that a little bit better prepared. But he is very important to Flint in this story. He is also where Rheorox is where Flint is going when he dies. He says that he'll be able to meet Rheorox and everything like that. So those are the 4 gods that are present in the first 3 novels of the Dragonlance series. Let me know if there's anything else you would like me to cover about the mythology. I feel like that's a pretty good summary of the mythology and their little presence in this story. Obviously, they take on a larger-than-life role, and they are the whole reason that we have this plot, like I mentioned before. So they are a big part, but there's not... It's kind of plain, other than the fact that Fizbin was not who we thought he was. It's very plain and simple of this mythology. Oh wait, we do have one more god. I can't believe I almost forgot. We've got Mishakal. Duh, the whole point of book 1 has Gold Moon has Mishakal's staff, and then she finds the rings, or the discs. Mishakal, the goddess of healing. So she is also very important because she is what has led the staff to be able to be found, and for the rings. The whole point of the first book is to find the rings that she can then place, or the discs that she can then give to the person who's supposed to have it, and it's bringing back the gods into the world. I can't believe I almost forgot that and didn't even have it on my notes. It just popped into my head right as we were talking. Thank you, all of you, for helping me remember Mishakal, who's very important in this book series as well. Gold Moon ends up becoming a good, faithful person, and ends up being the person that can bring back the teachings of the gods when the world had abandoned them to begin with. I'm sure there might either be like very tiny mentions of other gods or their temples possibly in these books, maybe in the beginning when they were walking around Solus, but I don't remember anything else very specific being mentioned about any other gods. So I left all of them out since they weren't really a big enough mention for me to even think of them, though considering I forgot Mishakal, I'm obviously not a good sense of character to be judging what is important or not. But I remembered in the end, and that's all that matters, right? If there's anything else you'd like me to talk about for the gods or have a discussion with, go ahead and comment down below. I would love to keep having a discussion about them with you and their role in this story. They really are the whole reason this story exists, and that the events happen as they happen. It's really a very important mythology because they interact so much with the characters, and there's the reason that the characters are doing what they're doing. Now let's go ahead and move on to magic. Magic is very, very important in this world, as it is in pretty much all fantasies. I'm not going to say 100% all fantasies have magic in them, and some fantasies have magic that is different than this kind of magic, in the fact of like mages and spell casting and that kind of stuff. Some are more of just the reason things happen can be magical, but nobody can actually wield magic. But in this particular story, we've got people who can cast magic, which we'll start with. Our first topic of magic is mages. We've got 3 different types. We've got the white robe, or the good mages. We've got the red robes, which are the mages of neutrality. And we've got the black robes, which are considered the dark ones, or evil mages. And mages in this particular story are very interesting in the fact that they always have to study their magic. The second they use a spell, they no longer remember it, and they have to go back and relearn the spell all over again. And they have to make sure they pronounce it all very, very precisely and exactly the way it's supposed to be said, and in exactly the tone or the inflection it's supposed to have. So they're constantly having to restudy all the magic that they constantly are using. So if they use a spell, they can't just say, hey, 2 seconds later, let me use it again, because they'd have to go back and look it up and see what the spell even is again, and relearn all the little inflections that they had to learn the first time. Magic also really tires the magic user. It's not just like, they can just fling spells everywhere and keep going. For example, like a Harry Potter, where they use their wand and it doesn't take any physical strength from them to cast spells. They can just cast as many as they want in whatever, with the strength that they already have. I mean, maybe they're falling asleep. That might be a little hard, but it's not like it actually takes a physical toll on their body. And we do not know totally how this works, but we do have mentioned that they end up drawing power and being related to the equivalent moon that they have. Speaking of moons, we're going back to how I'm obviously not a good rememberer of things, but the moons do have gods that are equated to each moon, but they aren't super mentioned, and so I feel like I can get away with the fact that they're not a big portion of these particular books. But we do have gods that are mentioned for the moons, so we should keep that in mind for maybe future analysis when we read more stories and know more about this world maybe we'll learn more about those gods as well, and they can be a bit more of a mention. Anyway, back to magic and mages. So yeah, they draw equivalent from their moons. They are kind of connected to that god, and their power comes from that moon. As for non-magic users or non-mages, we also know that they can study magic as well. Even though they can't use it, they can learn about it. Not necessarily the spells per se, but even Tas learns how to work magic when he is reading the dragon orb and teaching Laurana, this is how we're supposed to use the dragon orb. This is what the manual of the dragon orb says when I'm looking at it with the glasses. And we've got libraries that have tons of magical books in them, and those scholars, like with the historian, they're all there studying, learning, that kind of stuff. And who's to say some of them aren't learning some of the magic, even though they can't use it, they're still studying it and having it be something that you can learn as a knowledge base, even if you can't work the magic yourself. There also is the portion that relates to the gods, and the fact that the gods are a little bit ambiguous. We have those rules, like we've mentioned earlier, or the way magic works is that you have to continue to study it, and it gets tiring to use it, and you have to draw power from the moon. But Fizbin, who is Paladine, works magic, and we do not know for sure if the rules apply to the gods. That is the one exception that there might be for the way it works, because Fizbin was always joking about how he couldn't remember the fireball spell. But did he have to relearn it, or could he work it again? Did it really tire him out? We're not really sure, because he's only used a couple of spells himself. We don't really see him being tired by those spells, though. And being a god, you don't know if really his biology or his strength works the same as those living on the earth. That's the one area that we have a little bit of ambiguity on. We're not really sure exactly if the rules apply to him as well. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. We weren't given enough evidence to know. But we do know that gods can work magic, which is an interesting thing as well, considering in other stories it might not be the case that the gods can work magic on the earth plane. But in this one they can, and we do have that. We just don't know how binding the normal rules are to him, or to them in general. Then we've got that lots of different types of beings can use magic. It's not just that humans can use it, it's not just that elves can use it. We have a couple of different people that we know can use magic. Obviously, Razlin is the biggest one that comes to mind, and he was a human. But we also know that Gilthanas could use magic, and he was an elf. We don't get tons of information about the dwarves and their use of magic or not, so maybe at a later time we'll be able to know for certain how much dwarves can use it. And we don't really know much about Kinder using magic, whether that's really in their nature or not. But we aren't told specifically, no, Kinders can't use magic, so it's very possible that there's Kinder out there that can. Especially when we know that Tas and Laurana do work some magic. Which brings me to the next topic of not all magic is mage-only use. It's not that, you have to be a mage and cast spells. It's not the only way to work magic. Laurana and Tas work together to use the dragon orb, which is in itself a magical crystal or orb that has the magic imbued in it, and they are just controlling the orb that then works the magic. So it's interesting that they have magic that's not just spell casting, but they have also instruments of magic that can be used by non-magic users. And Tas uses his glasses to read how to use it, and Laurana, who we didn't know of any kind of magic, though we don't know for sure that maybe she, because Gilthanas couldn't use magic and a magic user, that maybe she also had that ability herself, but we aren't aware of that. So it seems like it's very possible that non-magic users can use magic instruments at least. Whether they can cast spells or not, that's a different quality. It's also very interesting to note the fact that there is a balance between magic versus non-magic, or mages versus not magic users. In a fantasy story, we might have a story like something that's coming right to the top of my head, but I'm sure there's some out there where there's the majority of the characters or the people who live in this world are magic users. Oh, one that comes to mind, I can't believe I missed this, is Jim Butcher's Furies of Calderon series. It's everybody pretty much has the ability to have some kind of affinity for nature, some kind of fury that they can manipulate some kind of element, if not multiple elements. So everybody pretty much can work their form of magic. At least I would consider that pretty much magic. It's biologically in everybody. And the main character, Tavi, is the person that can't use magic, and that is the weird person. And then there's stories that are where, pretty much nobody has magic, or it's a very, very few people have magic, and your main character or one of the characters in the story can work magic, and they are unique in the fact that they can work magic. But in our story, there's a balance. We've got plenty of magic users, and we've got plenty of people who don't work magic, and it's not just a overwhelming one side or the other. It's I wouldn't say a perfect balance, but I'd say it definitely has equal opportunities for both kinds of people in this world. Which makes it a little bit more interesting. It makes it so that way, not everybody has these abilities and they have to work around not being able to use magic. Versus the people like Raslin who have troubles because they can work magic and they want to become powerful. And that then damaged his body. So there's both good and bad parts of being able to work magic or not being able to work magic, and it kind of balances out in this world. Let's go ahead and move on to locations. I've got several important locations. I've got 4 main topics of locations, but 2 of them are grouped together into one kind of duo thing. So I guess I have 5 main locations that I think are important, at least for this set of 3 books. Later, when we read more and we come back and revisit, we will probably learn about new places that are important as well. But at least for this set of this story, I've got 5-ish places that are truly important, or at least I think are really important to the story and to the characters. So let's go ahead and talk about them. And I'm sure this first one is going to be an obvious one, and that's going to be Solace. Solace is our starting point, our touchstone. This is where the group gets back together. They're like a boy band. The group's getting back together at the beginning of book 1, and they all meet in Solace because that is all their home. That is where they all have lived together, had their adventures together, all regrouping back to this one place. The one place that is their touchstone, the one place that means the most to them as a group. Obviously, things have changed with the fact that we're adding new people. We've lost some of the people that we had at the beginning. But Solace is something that I believe all the characters held really deeply in their heart and is always going to be a home to them. Even if, like Tanis and Rana, who don't go back to Solace, versus Caramon and Tika, who do, that Solace will always have a place in Tanis's heart, because that is where him and his friends spent a majority of their time when they were hanging out together, and where they had homes and built lives there. And so Solace has a very small town, close-knit community feel to it. They are built in trees. It is a wooded area, and all of their buildings, except for a few that need to be on the ground, are built in the trees with walkways between the trees or stairs that go up the tree in order to get to the buildings. So it's kind of really interesting space and a really interesting community to be up above the ground and not down on the ground, even when they could have chosen to be on the ground. It's open to all races of beings. It does seem like it's in a human-based area, but all beings are welcome, just like, Flint lived there. Tass, was mostly living there. Tanis, who is half elf, half human, was living there. So it seems like, travelers come and go there, especially at the inn, and everybody is welcome, other than, in the end, draconians and goblins and things like that were not as wanted in the inn and in the area. But for the most part, everyone was welcome and everyone was treated equally in Solis. And let's go ahead and take a look on our map here. We've got the book. It's number 8. And the dots are like really tiny on this tiny map, but we are right here. That's where it says a number little 8 there. I don't know if you can see that at all or not. But if I take it back a little bit, we've got Qualinisty here, and then we've got our little number 8 there. So it's pretty close to Qualinisty, but it's not quite there. And we've kind of got it it's kind of in the middle of the map. It's not really super south, it's not really super north. It's not quite the middle, but it's a little bit on the southern portion of the middle. So let me get it close up one more time. See if you can see that little number 8 there. And Qualinisty's here, and our little number 8 there. So, again, it is really important. Solis is really important because of its importance to the characters. That's what I feel like the impact of Solis is it's where we started. It's where we pick back up when we get Tika and Gilthanas, and well, I guess Gilthanas we really get in Qualinisty. I'm not sure why I mentioned him, but he's, where he's really forced to be joining the group at this point is in Solis. And it's where they meet Goldmoon and Riverwind, and it's in their hearts. It's the place that they loved and they were able to be together, and when they had happy adventures before all the crap went down. So that is the main importance of Solis, is what they mean to the characters and what it means when we started there, and that's where we start our journey. The next place is another one I feel like that everyone's going to guess that I'd talk about, is Naraka. So we've got our starting point and we've got our ending point. And we only go to Naraka once, and that's very at the end. So it's a little bit different in the fact that we don't revisit Naraka, since that is where everything goes down in Naraka. It is the space for all evil to gather. It's where the Queen of Darkness is able to manifest any of her power into the real world. So it's very important for the evil set of characters, or the conflict, or anything you want to call them that you want to have them be titled as. It is their home base. So we kind of do have it paralleled in the fact that Solis is our good people's home base, their home where they felt safe. And then we've got Naraka, where we've got all the evil characters and everybody, the Queen of Darkness, who's trying to take over the world. This is her hub. This is the base, and this is where everybody is now gathering their forces together in order to take over the world. So it is the home of evil and darkness and everything bad in the world. There is a giant temple at Naraka. Well, at least there was one at one point that then we see before the cataclysm was destroyed. And then because Tekissus was released back into the world, it was remade anew. So the main focal point of Naraka is the temple, Tekissus' temple, and that's where she can manifest her power. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at the map again. Naraka is a number 5, and here we go. Right there, we've got a couple different. Okay, adjust a little bit where my finger's supposed to be. There we go. top little number there. There's a couple different numbers there, but it's this top one. So if we look at it compared to Solus, we start here and we end up here. So we've got quite a bit of distance between A and B, kind of on different sides of the world. It looks like Naraka is in the mountains, and Solus was a wooded area. So we do have those differences as well. We don't really know tons about the area Naraka is in, because we just kind of go there and everything starts going down. So there wasn't much time to explain other than the temple. But we do kind of know that it's meant to be kind of a very small area, especially before the Cataclysm. It was just a small town kind of around there. It wasn't a huge area. It might have been at one point, since that was where a temple was. But it was lost and decayed, and then became the evil's lair. So the importance of Naraka is all surrounded by the importance of the events that happen there and the conflict that happens because of the characters that are there. Did that make sense at all? So the characters that inhabit there are the Queen Takhisis, the Queen of Darkness, and she is the main conflict, the one that's trying to take over the world and destroy and wipe out everything good in the world. So it is important because that is where she can manifest, that is where she is at, that is where we meet her, that is all that jazz. And it's important because of the events that happen there. The events that happen there is what makes it so good can overcome evil. We've got Barum that dies there and returns the gemstone and closes the door back on Queen Takhisis. We've got the fact that Kitiara somehow has the crown at the end, and whatever we talked about whatever that means. We've got Tanis, who is chasing after Laurana and is finally reunited with her, and she is safe and sound. We've got, that's where, right outside of Naraka, we've got where we finally meet Fizbin as Paladine, and we find out everything that happened with that. And Caramon and sees Razlan again, and he has become a black-robed mage, and all that means. That's where Tika and Tass, were doing their best to help win against evil, and were fighting for their lives. So there is so much stuff that happens at Naraka that really makes it important to the story. It is where we finish our story. It is where everything goes down for our conflict and our plot. That is the height. And then we've got our resolution there as well. And it's where we end up ending the whole thing. They're like, okay, this is it. We're done. Evil's been destroyed, or at least balanced out to where it was supposed to be before. Alright, next is my little double grouping, and that's Quellanisty and Sylvanisty. The reason I group them together is because they're flip sides of the same thing, if that makes sense. They are both the home of the elves. They are both forests area or woods that they live in. So they're very similar in nature and stuff like that. The only thing is that they do have a very good contrast. We've got Quellanisty, who is a place that is still beautiful, and the forests are still flourishing, and the buildings there are still grand and wonderful, even if they were pushed out and nobody lives there anymore. And then we've got the flip side, which is Sylvanisty, which is now twisted and decayed and destroyed by the nightmare of Kyan Bloodbane, the dragon. So they're very opposite right now of how they look and the feel that they have of them. So we've got something that's abandoned and we've got something that's destroyed. Though the destroyed does seem, when we see that little bit with Alhana, to be recovering. But how long is that going to take? It's tough to know. But all the beauty that was there has been crumbled and destroyed. Or, on the opposite side, is still living, but it's been abandoned. So maybe it's not as flip-sided as we think, because both things have sadness to them. And they were both used as a way for the elves to separate themselves from the world. It is the elven hideaway. They didn't believe that they were on equal footing with the rest of the world. They thought they were higher species than the rest of the world, and removed themselves from the conflict of the world by hiding in their forests. So both of them were used for the same purpose. Hiding away from everything else and not wanting to deal with any other problems. But as well, both groups were driven out of their homes, either by being destroyed or by it not being safe anymore, and their hideaway was no longer something that would keep them safe and keep them hidden. So both of them were driven out. So it does have some pretty good parallels as well, which again is why I grouped them together. They're kind of contrasted and yet have the same purpose and the same portion to the elves. So it's also interesting because they're kind of flip side. They're in the same general southish location, if that makes sense, the same amount south. But one of them's on the west side and one of them's on the east side. So here we go. We've got our Qualinisty area here. We've got our Sylvanisty area here. Now, because they're different shapes, it does seem like Qualinisty is a smaller area, but it might be just the way that it's formed. But Sylvanisty does look like the area is bigger, covers more, the forest covers more ground. Don't know if that means anything in particular or not. But yep, there we go. Qualinisty and Sylvanisty. Okay. So, the main importance is that they do get pushed out of their hideaway. I feel like that's the importance of these locations, is what it means for the elves and what it means for the characters. So the characters visit both places and they get pushed out both times, just with the elves. The elves are already being pushed out in Qualinisty when they get there. They're already planning on leaving, and when the characters go ahead and go there, they are being pushed out right with them. Instead of being able to find some place to regroup, they're left to fend for themselves and pushed right out. Qualinisty, we do get Gilthanas and Lorana from that, visiting that area. So that is also important for that location, and the fact that we gain characters that are then important later on or throughout the rest of the story. But they go there, they want to try and have some help, they want to try and regroup, and they're basically just being pushed out with the elves because the elves no longer have the ability to hide. On the flip side, for Sylvanisty, they go there only to find that it's been destroyed and mangled, and there's not much else they can do to help the elves there. It's kind of the elves have, been pushed out already, and they come there to see that really they can't help the elves, and the elves must help themselves. So they get there, and it's another place that they can't stay. Though Sylvanisty, they weren't choosing to go there per se. Alhana kind of made them. But they get there, and instead of finding a safe haven to again regroup or whatever else they need to do, they are being dragged down through the dirt and the mud that Sylvanisty has become. Wipe that away, but then have to leave and be pushed out again. There's not a place that they could linger. No place was either a place for them to really regroup and find allies or anything like that. And last but not least, and one that you might be surprised on, is Istar, which has no map location. If you look on this map, I tried. There is no Istar location. There is no Istar number. I'll double check a third, fourth time. Nope, no Istar on our map. But we do visit it in our story. And it was the city that was destroyed by the gods during the cataclysm and sent to the bottom of the Blood Sea of Istar, which is part of how it got its name, Blood Sea of Istar. And for a very short while, our characters go down there and meet the people who live down there, who help save fellow drowning folks in the sea and bring them there to live. So it's kind of a unique place. There are ruins, and it's not like an actual place up on the surface that you could just go anywhere you want. It's its own little place, separate from the entire world, which is why it's not really known and it's not on our map. So it also has the home of, the sea elves. So we now have met all 4 kinds of elves, because technically there's also the Kaganesti elves. So we got 4 kinds of elves. So we made our 4th kind of elf there, and they help people not drown and take them to Istar, to these ruins, to live. So it is a place that was destroyed, but not completely lost. It is still livable, even if people wouldn't choose to live there and don't normally know about it. So I feel like the importance of Istar is the history that it has to the world and to the unknowns that it has to this world. There are unknowns to our characters. There are unknowns to the majority of the people who live in Krynn on the continent of Ansalon. And this place shows what's left to discover, that there's still more to discover about this world, that there's more than meets the eye about what's happening. Why would the gods sink this city only to make it still livable under the water? Maybe it was meant to become a way for people who were drowning to be saved. I don't know. I don't know what happened to the seafarers who were drowning before Istar sunk. But it's important to the history of this world and to the possibilities that this world still holds for in the future stories that we have yet to read. If there's any other important stories that you think, other important places that you think are important to mention and want to have a discussion about, please go ahead and comment down below. I would love to hear your opinions on it. And last but not least, unique features of this world. For me, I kept racking my brain. There's only one main unique feature I feel like really in this world. And I feel like there should be more. But maybe in these 3 books, that's the main thing that we come across. The unique feature for this world. But if there are more, and you can think of other things, go ahead and let me know down below. But the one that I came up with was the fact that this world has 3 moons to it. And obviously we talked already about how those 3 moons and the gods related to them give powers to our mages. But in most stories, obviously there's probably other stories that do have 3 moons, but not all other stories have 3 moons in their world. And so I find that that's one that is a very unique feature to this particular world in general, the world of Krynn. Again, I tried racking my brain, kept thinking like, what other unique features can I come up with that would be completely unique to this world? Physical attributes. And I can't really think of any others. So please let me know down below what other unique features you think that Krynn has. I would love to hear your ideas and your thoughts and opinions. And that is the end of part 1. So, as I said before, we have plenty more to discuss about the world of Krynn and in specific the continent of Ansalon. Anything that I didn't touch on that you think should have been in this little section that you would like to discuss or that you would like to know more about or my opinions on, go ahead and comment down below or on my Twitter at fantasyfiction1, and I will go ahead and love to have a discussion with you and to bring it up to everybody else as well so we can all learn together as always. If there are any other places you think I should have discussed, or if you think there's more unique features or something about the mythology that I should have mentioned or the mages, anything at all, go ahead and let me know and I'll be sure to add it to our part 2 lesson. as well as when in the part 2 we're going to be having things about different races of beings, different creatures, like different societies. We're going to talk about the histories. We're going to talk about more of those kind of things. So those are all going to be coming up. Let me know though if there's anything particular you would like to discuss for those aspects as well down below for part 2. I really hope that you really enjoyed this new set of classes I would like to introduce us to. I think it's going to be really fun to really dissect the different things that come along with this world and how it affects the story. I think it's really, really interesting and exciting to think of how complex these writers make these worlds and how detailed and how realistic they can be because of all the little details and how they move the story along or don't move the story along, or just interesting things about it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and let you go, and I will see you in our next class, which will probably be our first 5 chapters on the Mercy Thompson book, first Mercy Thompson book in the series, Moon Called. See you guys then. Bye.